WHYY, the Christina Cultural Arts Center, and the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League are hosting an event designed to bridge the community by engaging in conversations that may not always be comfortable. The program is called RACE, Removing Fences Between Black and White Communities, and it all takes place on Tuesday, May 16th at the Baby Grand. In the studio today, we have Dr. Donald Morton of the Complexities of Color Coalition. Dr. Morton will oversee the breakout session, or one of our breakout sessions, actually. Just want to say thank you for being a part of the program and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored always to be with you.
So I want to get started. You've been active in the community for a long time, and I'm sure you've seen firsthand racial disparities. Why are these conversations so important today?
They're important today because they've really never been properly held. Anytime that a conversation around race ensues, it's always an impolite and uncomfortable conversation. We always get to a place where we attempt to have them, and then the conversation becomes a little uncomfortable, and then we kind of retreat from having the kinds of conversations that really need to take place. So I'm excited about the fact that at least a group of individuals are willing to come together to continue the dialogue around race and racial disparities.
So some issues involving race are subtle, some are blatant. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the incident with Adam Jones of the Baltimore Orioles. Some fans at Fenway Park, they threw some peanuts at him, and they were just calling him some ugly names. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think those things are really low-hanging fruit, right? I am not as concerned about racial slurs and commentary that are made by what I consider to be really uninformed and ignorant people. What I am more concerned about are individuals that are in power and positions of influence that have an ability to create laws and legislative acts that further oppress a group of people because of a skin tone and color. And so oftentimes when we have these conversations, we have them trying to change individual behaviors, and I think that's important, but I think the more important work is around paying attention to the structural things that exist that keep a certain people group oppressed.
So do you feel the same way about subtle comments? I mean, because say you're in a very expensive store, right? And a salesperson comes up to you and she says, hey, no, I think you should go to the discount rack. You can't afford this stuff. What do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, those things don't bother me. I think, not to suggest at all that they're not problematic, they are. Mm-hmm. But I think we would better spend our energy and time talking about the individuals that hold those kinds of ideas dear, those value systems dear, and are in positions of power and influence that get a chance to create laws and policies that act out those biases that exist.
Whether subtle or blatant.
Whether subtle or blatant.
All right, so I recently spoke with B.B. Coker. She's no stranger to protesting racial or social injustices. She says the problem is that people are too judgmental when it comes to race. Now, do you see that when you're out and about in the community?
Certainly. There are individuals that are a part of white America that are judgmental. There are people that are a part of Black America that are judgmental. But racism and racist acts, it has to be understood, can only be perpetrated by people in power. You cannot be racist and you don't hold power. Racism can only be expressed when you're in power. And so my judgmental attitude against somebody in white America has a lot less influence because I'm not a people group in power in comparison and juxtaposed to an individual that is a part of the dominant culture that can enact that power or that bias against a people group.
So since I have you here, we understand that removing fences between Black and white communities means uncomfortable conversations like you shared, but sometimes it's with people who live inside of a box.
Yes.
Do you have a personal experience you would like to share?
You know, I think all of us have experienced over the course of our lifetimes and our ancestors, right? Stories over and over again of individuals that view us a certain way. And a part of what I think our responsibility is not just to play the respectability politic, right? That I have to live up to a standard that is set by another people group. But I have to be willing to acknowledge not just my own bias, but I've got to acknowledge and cause a person in another people group to acknowledge theirs. And when we begin to do that, and when they are willing to embrace the fact that yes, I have bias, yes, I live in a bubble, yes, there are some things I don't understand, and yes, I've been unwilling or unable to bracket, suspend my personal ideas about a person in order to get to know them and then form my attitudes and understandings about them. Until they are willing to do that, we'll always be in this situation.
The one thing Coker said is that we need to connect with one another. Mm-hmm. And in order to connect, that means meeting people where they are mm-hmm. in order to move forward. Mm-hmm. Is that?
I agree with that, but again, I overemphasize the fact that the beginning of that, the genesis of that, the origin of that must begin with white America.
Okay.
It must begin with their willingness to say, let's come to the table, let me seek to understand you, understand what you've been through. Black folk have gone through traumatic experiences for centuries. And there's this attitude, this pervasive attitude that we ought to be over it by now, but we're still encountering the same things over and over again. And once that's acknowledged, then we can begin to have a conversation.
For those of you at home, don't forget to mark your calendars. The program Race, Removing Fences Between Black and White Communities will take place on May 16th at 6 p.m. at the Baby Grand in Wilmington. And you can register for the event at WHYY.org/events. Click on our event page and we'll see you there.